Hello lovely people, we're going to talk about intros and conclusions for section C expository essays with an exam particularly in mind. So think about time, efficiency and being precise as possible. So what I want you to picture is you're a published clever author, you're on a panel just like this one. The moderator is asking you these big broad questions. You're a linguist, language, does it shape or are we shaped by it? These big kind of questions that you get in your section C. So first thing you want to do, you want to say, great question. And so you reframe the question back at them, but you give them your take on it. That's how you get started. That's the beginning of the introduction. Then you want to outline the three things that you're an expert on. So whatever you've prepared, those are the three things you're going to talk about. But of course, you're going to mirror their language back to them. So you're going to say, well, teen ethnolect, is shaping of. So you're using the keywords that they've given you, but of course you're bringing your expertise to it. Importantly, they can be short. You can have a one-sentence intro and a one-sentence conclusion. That's been provided a couple of times as a really good example. So as I love to say, as a teacher of English and English language for 12 years, I've never thought to myself, oh, what a beautiful introduction or what a beautiful conclusion. I've never been sitting in an English meeting and had anyone slide me an introduction or a conclusion and said, oh, read this, it'll change your life. Hasn't happened. To give yourself shape and to show that you've really thought about these things, you kind of want to have a hot take. You want to be delivering something that shows that you've sort of taken a side. But in linguistics, as we know, there's no like absolutes. Everything's contextual, situational, cultural, etc. But you want to have a strong opinion put forward, a strong response to the question you've been posed. And linguist quotes are very common in introductions, especially, and in some conclusions as well, as you'll see when we flick through. And one thing you want to be doing is rather than just saying firstly, secondly, thirdly, like you probably did in your SAC, for an exam, you don't have as much time. And so what you want to be doing is just using contrasting connectives, like on the other hand or on the one hand, or whilst some people might say, those kind of things to guide us through your argument rather than just saying first, second, third. But of course you want to be modal as well. So soften the things that you say because nothing is always true in all things. Yeah, that works as a sentence. All right, so intro, thesis statement is you saying, great question. Let me reframe it back to you with what I think about it. Then you're going to have three clear points. So this first one, they're going to talk about the in-group, those who don't belong, and those who are sort of affiliated in, neither in or out. Second one is the one we'll talk about a fair bit. It's a one-sentence introduction. So they've got the thesis statement in there. They've got the three topics, instant messaging, other forms of digital communication, and varieties of changes, all in one sentence. So again, that could save you a lot of time if you think of it that way. And the bottom one, we have their thesis statement. Then they're going to talk about writing, the spoken mode, and formal context. So they're the three topics that they've brought to it. And you can see there's a linguist quote in there as well. Importantly, the things other than what I've highlighted are them matching the language to the question they've been asked. So that's something you can do. But again, if you can do it in one sentence, that does the job. So we've got some hot takes here. Basically, what I want you to do is pause this screen, look back at an introduction you've done to time or a practice that you've done, and compare the hotness of your takes to the hot takes that have been provided here. So you can see they're still modal, so it's not saying they are vital in that bottom one. It's saying is often vital. So you're still being modal, but you want to take a strong stance and make people want to read what you're about to write, essentially. And again, you can see linguist quotes have been sort of interwoven into there. Obviously, it's better if you can embed it as they've done in the one up the top here, and the one down the bottom just sort of drops it in at the end, which is perhaps not as fluid as it could be, but still it's likely better than most because it has a linguist quote in it. Conclusions, again, a conclusion basically should be mostly hot take, and again you can chuck a linguist quote in there if you've got a spare one or one that you've written down or you've memorized or whatever you've got. Maybe at the start of your exam you wrote down all your quotes and then you had a couple left over. By all means, chuck them in the intro and the conclusion if you can make them fit. Again, hot takes in the intro as much as possible, largely reflects constantly evolving, leads to a change in language. Just make sure you're saying something. You've discussed all these big ideas, you've been pondering them, looking for examples all year long. You've got a lot to say and a lot of thoughts on it. 2018, again, feel free to pause it, look at the kind of language that they're using to frame their hot takes. It's modal, but it's also strong. Conclusion, this is where we're looking at contrastive connectives and modality. So this is true for both the intro and the conclusion, but you can see some purple words highlighted here. You might want to pause and think about how you can use them. So while, within, hence, and, it also, ultimately, all these are great. And even more here, again, pause it, and there'll be some right at the end as well. And of course, Linguist quotes in intro and or conclusion works well as well. And down the bottom, you can see the bottom one's especially interesting to me because if you look at it, colloquialisms and profanity, ethnolex and idiolex, and teen identity, those are probably 3 things that you've prepared for your exam as well. And so looking at the topic sentence and those 3 points, maybe compare that to one that an introduction you've written, and just see how they've approached theirs differently and how they've matched their language to the language of the question. And this one's really juicy. You aim for a conclusion. You want to be doing a mic drop, leave them with something to think about. And this one's done it especially well because the essay question is, it's just language. Who cares if it's formal or informal, standard or non-standard? And their very last line is, it's just language. So that's a nice little chef's kiss, mic drop. And whoever's reading your essay goes, okay, this kid was paying attention to the essay question, not just bringing something pre-hashed. And then again, pause it here, look at an intro or a conclusion that you've done already, and try and force all of these connectives into it. So obviously that's probably pushing it too far, but just to practice using them and utilizing them in important ways would be a good idea.